interviews, I'll be sharing lessons I've learned from the labor room, as well as stories from clients that I've worked with, and meditations and visualizations to help you to prepare for a positive birth experience. I'm presently working at a home birth practice in Cape Town, South Africa, but I travel frequently to work with couples around the world, and I offer courses and resources on my website, thevirtualmidwife.com. I believe in birth, and I believe in supported, informed choice, and that's what this podcast is all about. I also have a lively and vibrant Facebook group called the Virtual Midwife Cafe, where I offer lots of valuable free resources as well as weekly live sessions on topics of interest and that you want to know more about. Thanks for listening to the Virtual Midwife podcast, and enjoy today's show. Hello again, my lovelies, and thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you're all well and happy and healthy. It's a cold and chilly evening here in Cape Town, South Africa, and I'm actually doing the recording from my bed. So if you hear a little bit of rustling in the background, then please forgive me, but it's really cold outside and I'm on call for a birth. I've just got this funny feeling that tonight is the night. But so far, it's been fairly quiet. So I thought I would take the opportunity to record a podcast and to do it on intuition, because I've been thinking about the lady that I'm on call for all day, which is kind of like an intuition. It's an inner knowing. It's a sense that just comes from deep within, that feels right for no apparent reason. It's almost like a sixth sense, and it's a sense of knowing without any prior knowledge. And that's kind of how I'm feeling. And I know that in my work as a midwife, I really do rely on my intuition a lot. And I know that very often the women that I work with are particularly intuitive. And I'm sure that you've noticed in your pregnancy that you feel more intuitive and you're more likely to tap into that sense of inner knowing, because it's all about your body and your pregnancy, and pregnancy is such a heightened state of awareness. And we all experience it in different ways. Most of us will feel it sort of physically as kind of a fluttering in the belly or a tightness in the chest. And if it feels, or if it relates to something that feels wrong, it's more like a heaviness or a sinking feeling or even a buzzing sound that seems to kind of drown everything else out. But when it relates to something that feels right, it's like being held, a feeling of lightness and a sense of sureness. It's almost like being nudged towards or away from something or someone. I encourage you to create a daily habit of quiet introspection and reflection during your pregnancy, so that you are able to tune into yourself, that sense of inner knowing, or sometimes even you might think of it as an inner voice. Some of you may even think of it as your baby, because while you're tuning into your intuition, and it allows you to connect to your baby, and very often you will get a sense of something, or a thought will pop into your mind, and it's almost as if you're having an imaginary conversation or getting messages from your babies. Being able to listen to your intuition in pregnancy requires a sense of deep trust, though. That doesn't always come naturally. And it's especially hard when it's juxtaposed with conflicting information, of which we know there is plenty. The other thing, of course, is that doctors and medical staff really don't place much emphasis on intuitive knowing, and they don't have much regard when faced with it. You might even find that when you start listening to your intuition, you have to justify it to your doctor or even your husband or family. And sometimes when you're justifying it, you start to second guess yourself or be talked out of or into something that intuitively feels right or wrong. And there's a beautiful quote by Albert Einstein that I love to use in my classes. And what he says is that the intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is its faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. And that really is so true. I just love it, because learning to trust your inner knowing is about getting to a point where you can allow it to guide your behavior, your choices and your decisions, especially during pregnancy and birth. But it does take a lot of practice. I know that when I was a student, I really had to learn to balance my intuition with my fear. And I was mentored by wise and experienced midwives who taught me to balance that techno-medical knowledge with my inner knowing and with my five senses, and to really use my five senses. And you are going to find that you will be faced with so many choices during your pregnancy, and some of them will feel wrong, some will feel right. All of them will require research and study. All of them will probably get opinions from family, friends, and even from professionals. And all of them will seem quite overwhelming at some point or another. So what I want to help you with today in this podcast is just about learning how to rally your intuition and use it as a valuable tool that you can rely on. And there's a couple of ways that you can learn to use your intuition. With practice, you can use your intuition to give you insight that helps you solve a problem or find a solution that you had not thought of previously. Everything that you've ever seen, heard, and experienced is stored in your subconscious mind. And opening yourself up to your intuition is like giving your subconscious mind permission to access this existing information that's already there, and allowing your subconscious mind to find creative ways of problem solving that reflect both reality and experience. What you acquire over time makes your intuition a reliable source of information that will help you to make conscious and rational decisions. One of the easiest and most enjoyable ways of getting your analytical mind to stop overanalyzing is by distracting it with another activity. And I'm sure that many of you have seen or possibly even become part of the latest coloring in craze. And it is an amazing way to focus your mind, and it's an activity where you really are engaged in doing something. And if you go onto my website, thevirtualmidwife.com, you'll see that I have a download of a coloring book that is filled with beautiful pregnancy images and affirmations. And while you're coloring them in, it will allow your mind to naturally just mull over what the words that are written there, while you're focused on the act of coloring. And instead of worrying and stressing, you're giving your mind that one pointed focus and engaging that analytical part of your mind in the act of coloring, and in doing so allowing your creativity to flow. And when that happens, your subconscious mind can access past experience, past knowledge, and information that is stored there. So besides just being relaxing and enjoyable, don't be surprised that when you take time out to do a coloring exercise, especially if you're doing it with pregnancy affirmations and pictures, you may find that you get insights that you hadn't previously considered, because your mind just wanders without constraint or pressure. The reason we call intuition our sixth sense is because it's so closely related to the other five senses. The only thing is that our sixth sense is not tangible. But at the end of the day, our senses are a protection mechanism. A good example would be when you visit a doctor that you don't know, and you sit down in front of the doctor and they seem fidgety and nervous. They're unable to make or maintain eye contact. You might hear something that seems incongruent with the situation. So you ask the doctor how they feel about natural birth, and they mumble the answer, or they say it's too early to talk about it. But they'll say, but I do support it, but we'll talk about it later, which kind of, it's an incongruent answer. It's not the answer you want to hear. It's not engaging you in a conversation. These are all tangible, noticeable sensations that put your sixth sense, which is not tangible, into high alert. So you're using your eyes, your ears, your hands, your skin, and even your emotions and intellect to capture those sensations and information. And it's like reaching out to those invisible waves and sounds and images and allowing your intuition to guide you. Your senses are decisive factors in the way you manage and make decisions, but with a greater awareness of those senses and the data that they provide you, you will be better equipped to translate your experiences into effective action. So start practicing listening to your intuition by asking yourself a question like, if I knew I would receive help from my intuition, what is it I am most concerned about or need to know about the situation? So whatever situation it is that you are facing, and possibly it is that doctor's visit that I've just used an example, and you walk out feeling really unsettled, then ask yourself, if I knew I would receive help from my intuition, what is it that I am most concerned about or need to know about the situation? And then just allow yourself some quiet time to allow your subconscious mind to show you or steer you or direct you, or to even just give you a feeling of what it is. It could be a situation of deciding where you should give birth, and perhaps you visited several hospitals and birthplaces, but you're not fully convinced which one is right for you and your partner. So ask yourself this question constantly while holding that situation in your mind, and allow yourself to observe what's going on without overanalyzing it. This is essentially a feeling exercise, and you need to do it several times and probably even in different states of mind. So you might repeat it every time you visit the hospital and see if anything changes. You might find that as you get to know the system better and as you develop a relationship, you start feeling more positive, more trusting, more relaxed, and more open. Or maybe the opposite happens and your inner knowing nudges you to explore other options. And this is a great one to start with, to use to practice tuning into your intuition and using it and learning how to use it to guide your decision making. When you ask yourself that question, just notice if you feel anything physically when you think about that situation. Notice what's happening in your gut, in your throat, in your chest. Does it feel good or bad? Does it feel positive or negative? And notice if it's a pushing feeling or a pulling feeling. Or if you get any vivid images in your mind. They could be symbols, they could be shapes or colors, or even memories or past events. And if it's a memory or a past event or a story that you've heard, what do those things represent for you? What thoughts do they bring up? You might hear words or recall past conversations when thinking about that situation. So what is the overall feeling of that? And what are your senses sensing? Are your overall feelings and senses congruent with what you've been told, or even with what you'd like to believe? The second way you can use your intuition is to prepare yourself emotionally for unexpected news. I've had several clients who intuitively knew that they would miscarry. Now, although this is a common fear amongst all women that I work with, all the ones that I spoke to told me that this was a very strong knowing that moved beyond the natural fear of miscarriage. And while this didn't make losing their babies any easier, it helped them to make sense of it afterwards. And the healing was easier because it was such a deep sense of knowing that this pregnancy was just not meant to be. And it happens just as often with women who know that they're pregnant before they've even had any physical signs or got to the point where they're able to take a test. Many women even know the moment they conceive. Another way that your intuition works is through dreams. It's very common to have strange and really bizarre dreams when you're pregnant, and I'm sure that you've had a few of them. Things like giving birth to cats, or your baby turning into a monster, or leaving your baby somewhere. Remember that dreams are your mind's way of working through daily events, worries, and fears. And with practice and intention, it's actually possible to ask your intuition for a dream or image that will guide your decision or your behavior in a specific situation. So if we use the same situation as before about choosing where it is that you would like to give birth, this time allow yourself to be guided by your dreams. It's always a good idea to keep your journal next to your bed so that you can jot everything down as soon as you wake up. Because our dreams are vivid and clear in the first moments of waking, but you need to mindfully capture those images and the feelings before they disappear. You know how quickly they can vanish, and they can't be retrieved no matter how far back in your mind you reach. So go to bed with the intention of dreaming about that specific situation and with a specific question in mind. As you lay down, mentally ask your intuition for a dream or an image that will guide your decision in that situation. Repeat the request as often as you can before you drift off, and then when you wake up, even if you don't remember anything specific, just write or draw whatever comes into your mind immediately. And then look over and evaluate what you receive. And if you have received something that makes sense, then act on the advice where appropriate. Using your dreams is a lovely way to learn to connect with your intuition, and you'll be surprised at what comes from your dreams. I know that I am particularly open to getting messages and insights into situation through my dreams, and I use my dreams a lot, especially when I'm going through stressful situations. The third way you can use your intuition is to alert you to take action. I've got a beautiful story about one of my clients who decided that she wanted to take a 5-hour road trip to see her parents when she was 37 weeks pregnant. She had a low risk, completely uncomplicated pregnancy, and I saw her the day that she decided she was leaving and reassured her that all was well and there were absolutely no signs of labor. But on the second night, she woke up at 3 in the morning with a really strong sense that she needed to get back immediately. And her husband did everything he could to convince her to just go back to sleep, but she was adamant that despite having absolutely no signs of being in labor, she just knew that she'd woken up with a very strong sense that she needed to get back, and she knew that it would take her 5 hours to get back home, and she convinced her husband to pack up the car. She left a note for her mum saying that she was leaving, everything was fine, and she wasn't even afraid. She just felt really excited and energized. And as soon as she got in the car, she relaxed, and within 3 hours of their journey back, she started feeling her contractions coming really, really hard and fast. So they headed straight for the hospital, and her baby was born within 30 minutes of their arrival. Funnily enough, her birth was exactly as she had imagined it, and she was just so relieved that she'd listened to her strong inner knowing. And this experience had a deep and lasting effect on her ability to trust her natural instincts to mother her baby, because she had such a strong connection to that inner sense of knowing. The fourth way to use your intuition is to listen to your body's subtle signals. But this requires taking time out to stop and to listen. To be pregnant in awareness will help you to shift your focus from the external factors like doctors and hospitals, tests and scans and gadgets, to the internal workings of your mind and your body. I know that many of the discomforts of pregnancy can be really frightening if you take them literally. Your first thought if you experience sharp pain in your lower belly is of losing your baby. But if you notice that throughout your pregnancy, you experience many sharp stabbing and pulling type sensations in your belly at different times and in response to different things and for different reasons, most often they are normal. And if you tune into your intuition and ask your intuition before or as it happens, it gives you a deep sense of what is actually happening. Your labor will also begin with a series of pulling and tightening sensations in your belly. So it's really important that you get used to these new sensations, learn to interpret them, and to use your intuition to tune into them before Googling them. When you do experience something like that, just notice where you feel it in your body. Describe it to yourself. Is it sharp? Is it pulling, stabbing, tense, or aching? And then take a moment to just quieten your mind and breathe into that sensation, seeing if you can mentally release or let it go. And as you're doing that, you're asking your inner knowing if this sensation is a normal part of your pregnancy or an alert to take action. Take a moment to notice where you feel the answer and how it shows itself to you. Of course, you want to make sure that you try not to let fear get in the way of that answer or to cloud your judgment. Just remember that you can always get it checked out to be reassured, but the more you trust your judgment and the more it is confirmed by checking it out, the more you will learn to rely on it and use it effectively during your pregnancy, during your labor, and during your birth. And then the last way of tuning into your intuition that I'm going to talk about on today's podcast is to connect and communicate with your unborn baby. Now, this is by far my favorite way of working with intuition. I truly believe that connecting and communicating with your unborn baby is easily within your reach, and it will be one of the most profound experiences of your pregnancy. But does require a sense of trust in the way that your baby chooses to communicate with you that will deepen your sense of trust in the experience of pregnancy and birth. Every aspect of your life, of your body, and of your experience is affected on some level by the presence of your baby growing in your womb, in your belly. So you're already physically deeply connected, and learning this exercise will really help you to access and strengthen that bond so that you can tap into your baby and your baby's inner knowing. In the same way that connecting to new sensations will guide you to become more comfortable at understanding and interpreting them, connecting your baby will guide your actions, your choices, and your decisions during pregnancy and birth. You and your baby are a team. Your baby doesn't need to read my books or attend my classes to know when and how to be born. Your body just knows when and how to give birth. So this requires a letting go of resistance, getting out of the way, and just allowing. Because your baby responds really positively to being seen and noticed while still in your belly. And this appreciation, I'm sure you've already noticed, is expressed with responsive kicks, with a feeling of well-being, and it's fed back to you through those invisible pathways of thought and that felt sense of connection in your body. I really encourage you to carve out a few moments to sit quietly every day, no matter what's going on in your life, to connect with your baby and create your own unique form of communication. This already creates a habit of listening and seeing, and it gives you so much confidence in the first days after your baby is born. You'll learn how your baby communicates with you, and you will learn to listen to and to trust this unique bond that allows you to understand and interpret what your baby needs without words. It gets stronger day by day, and it's very unique to you and your baby. Nobody else will have this bond and this unique form of communication that you create between yourself and your baby. Just remember that. Nobody will ever know your baby better than you. Ever. So I'm going to end off this podcast to do a little practice of learning to connect and communicate with your baby. So if you're able to, then make sure that there's no distractions and just allow yourself 5 to 7 minutes to sit with your eyes closed. Place one hand on your belly and the other on your heart, and bring your attention and your awareness to your breathing. Letting go of any tension, and just noticing the gentle rise and fall of your chest with each breath, consciously slowing and deepening the breath. Noticing that with each breath you become more aware of your body and how you are feeling. Releasing, letting go, and allowing yourself to relax and tune into your body. After a few breaths, just become aware of your heart beating rhythmically under your hand. Take a moment to enjoy this feeling, and then expand your awareness to feel the connection between your heart and your belly. Imagining each beat of your heart nurturing your unborn baby. Feel the natural connection between your heart and your womb. Allow the love to flow. Just enjoying this feeling of peace and connection. Every beat of your heart carrying rich, deep, oxygenated blood and nutrients, nurturing your unborn baby. Each beat of your heart carrying your love. Every breath you take, a breath for your baby. Your hands have healing energy. So gently rubbing your belly, imagine healing lights and healing energy coming out from them. Just feel the warmth of your belly. Imagining that love passing from the hands, through the skin of your belly, through your womb, and and touching your baby. And as you notice that, notice how your baby responds to that loving touch and the thoughts of love and attention that you're placing on him or her. Notice how your baby responds to that touch. And imagine allowing your baby to touch you back, and notice where you feel your baby's touch. Where do you feel it in your body? And breathe into that feeling. Breathe into that feeling and that sense of connection, thinking about all the things that you're grateful for, the love that you feel. Sending love from your heart, from every cell in your body to your baby, and feeling that love coming straight back to you. Allow yourself to get a sense of the energy surrounding your baby. Is it calm? Is it peaceful? Is it joyful? And how does it make you feel? What thoughts arise when you pay attention to your baby, when you place all your loving attention and awareness on your baby? You might have a question, so have an imaginary conversation either quietly in your head or out loud. It doesn't matter what you talk about, but just enjoy sharing your thoughts and notice what thoughts arise for you as you pause to listen. One of my favorite questions is, what do I need to know before giving birth? Remember that the answers will not always be literal. In fact, the way that your baby communicates with you is through symbols, images, words, colors, or even just a feeling. So trust whatever it is that you see, or feel, or hear, or experience. Just acknowledge your baby and be open to what arises, and try responding to those messages or thoughts that you receive, and notice what happens. And whenever you end your session, thanking your baby for showing up, thanking your baby for responding, thanking your baby for the beautiful connection that you have, sending that loving energy through your hands, feeling the energy coming back, and then bringing your awareness back to the present moment with a deep sense of knowing, with a deep sense of trust, with a deep sense of love. I really encourage you to keep a journal of your thoughts and experiences, especially of those communication sessions that you have with your baby. And when your baby is old enough to open a discussion, or when you feel the time is appropriate, you may be surprised that children recall the conversations and thoughts that they had while still in the womb. You may also be surprised to notice that they recognize pieces of music that you play repeatedly throughout your pregnancy. And it really has been my experience that parents who engage in this process find their way to a place of connection with their babies while resonating on a really high level of consciousness. It's not uncommon for parents to receive very clear messages, usually in symbolic or picture form, of what your baby needs or wants, or even just conveying a sense of reassurance. So stay open. Use journaling and art supplies so that they can give you a tool to integrate the experience for yourself. Remember that when you set the focus of your communicating with your unborn child in play and joy, you will receive much more information. And just before we end, I just once again want to give you another example of intuition in my own life. As you know, I work in a home birth practice, and as I mentioned earlier, we use intuition a lot in the decisions that we make. Because we're not beholden to a system and policies and procedures, we can work directly with the mom and really discuss and be open to all the options that are available. And the first question we always ask the mom is how she feels and how her baby feels and what she intuitively feels is the right course of action before we do anything. And it's never yet let us down. So your intuition will be a very powerful tool for you to use during your pregnancy, during your labor, and during your birth. And I really encourage you to practice some of these exercises so that you get better at doing it and better at trusting what you intuitively know. Remember that your intuition is called your inner knowing or your higher being, whatever you want to call it, but it is definitely a sense of inner knowing. But it's just about learning to trust it. I hope that you've enjoyed that. I hope you were able to take some time out to do the exercise. If you weren't in a place or a time where you were able to do the communicating with your baby session that I included at the end of this podcast, then try and carve out some time later on in the day or in the week so that you are able to do that, possibly even making your own recording so that you can repeat it several times. Enjoy, and I will see you soon for another episode of the Virtual Midwife podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Virtual Midwife podcast. The show is available on Audioboom, iTunes, Google Play, Radio Public, and TuneIn. If you've enjoyed it, please share it and leave me a review. I love to hear your feedback, and I'm always looking for inspirational and uplifting stories to share. Make sure you sign up on my website and social media channels, and let's share the love. Thanks for listening. This is Karen Wilmot, the Virtual Midwife, signing off until next time.